Hello and welcome to lesson 12. This is the last lesson that we're going to need to make our wine bottle animation. And our last lesson for this wine bottle will be to render and how to render using Arnold. Now, there are two things that we know from rendering thus far, and that is that when you have your Arnold renderer open, you can select the left and click your perspective shape and your new cameras, and that we can keep it loaded so that every time we move the scene it auto renders, or just have it as one picture and pause it throughout. Now, rendering is very important to get your final animation or final model or your final product. As you can see, when we look at our scene, this is our perspective view. When we look around, we can see our table, all the objects, and normally we wouldn't even see the textures. We would see the simplicity of it to make the scene render faster, or you can see the perspective faster. You can see the lights and every object that's in the scene. Now, your render is your final product, your final picture that you see through your camera. And if there's any animation to the camera, like we did in lesson 11, there will be viewpoints from within your camera, as we have now. You can see at the bottom, there's camera shape 1. That means it's looking through the camera that we animated with. Now, if you see, as we move the slider, the render actually keeps going. Now, there are two things to note, which is this is how you open your render window, and the most important is your render settings. Now, when you open your render settings, it will most likely pop this up. Now, you can see there's only two things that you need to worry about when you're rendering a still image. So let's say there's no animation, you have a model, and you just want to export one image, one scene. How you do that is you go to your settings, and if you have textured using only Maya, you can actually switch this to your Maya software. And this is your original Autodesk Maya renderer. Now, if you want to edit some things within the Maya renderer, you click on the Maya software, and these are all your advanced settings, essentially, where you can control your shading and particles. Particles are your tiny pixels making up the picture. The more particles you have, the better the quality. Now, an easy way for better quality is going to make through your Arnold renderer. Now, your Arnold renderer, you only need to worry about two things for now for still images, which is Arnold renderer, and system. For your Arnold renderer, these options will come up under sampling. Now, the most important is actually camera in brackets AA. This is essentially your setting for your overall quality of the image, of the render that you have. It's at 3, and 3 is not bad. It's not great, but it gives you a good final result. Now, if you are working with really high quality aspects, you can always bring this up to a 10. And you can see the specifics that the pixels and all the details will actually increase. So your camera affects everything. It's your overall setting. The more lower you do it, the lower the pixels, the lower the setting. Higher you do it, obviously it increases by a lot, actually. It goes from 4 to 400. Now that's your overall quality. Your diffuse is your light that is diffusing. It doesn't shine too bright. Your specular is your shiny objects and the details of how light reflects off of the shiny object. Transmission is like the previous setting. It's light affecting through, let's say, a glass. And that's also a setting for SSS and volume indirect. It basically means the same thing. Now, obviously, when you look through them, when you have the renderer running, you can actually play around with the setting and see what gives the best outcome for the lowest amount of time. the more you increase these settings, the more time it takes. Now you can see the total time it takes to render one image. It is taking its time now because it is currently using the CPU of your computer, and there you go. It took 20 seconds for one still frame to render. The lower you make the setting, the faster the render actually becomes. Now you can see it only took a second, essentially, when we put all of our settings to -1 or 1. The more higher you do it, the more your time increases. Now it took 2 seconds. Now if you put it to 10, because it is very high quality, your time can actually increase from 2 seconds per frame to 2 minutes per frame, which is an insane amount of time if there is an animation. Let's say you have a 1-minute animation, that's 60 frames, and that means 2 minutes for every frame. That is a lot of time. Now, a good way to work around that is if you have a good computer, you can go under System, and instead of running it under your CPU, I actually have a good GPU. You can always check under your settings and properties in your computer to see if your computer can actually run a good renderer under a GPU. Now I have a good GPU. You can always change it from CPU to GPU. Now with that, your settings also change. Now you can see that it, instead of 20 seconds, it actually took 4 seconds now. And you can also see that the quality is actually a lot less. And also for this, if you do a GPU, all of these are blocked. The only thing that you can change is your camera one, which is your overall quality. Now that's easier for you. You don't need to mess around with anything else specific. You can honestly just put it to 10 and it will render at a very high quality at a very fast pace. Now, this would take around less than 20 seconds, I would hope. And if you were to do it on your CPU, it can take, like I said, up to 2 minutes or even longer. The most I've ever rendered was it took around 15 minutes per frame for an animation, which took weeks to render a few seconds of video. Now you can see the quality of it. It is very, very good. And the glass looks perfect. Now I'm going to leave it at 10 because it's only 14 seconds, which is not much. If you want to save this specific image, just your singular frame, you can go to File in your render view and just click Save Image. Once you click Save Image, you can actually, just save it with whatever name you want. Let's do this, still image rendered. And it will save as a JPEG or PNG or whatever you want. And there you go. You have a still frame saved. Now, what we want is our animation exported. And in order to do that, we actually have to use a few more steps. Now, the first thing, if you want to export an animation, Maya doesn't actually have the capability to do that. What you have to export is each individual frame, and in the end you have to use a different software to put all those frames together. Just like how an original video is made, the concept of a video is it takes essentially thousands of pictures and compiles them together and plays them 1 second after another, which makes a video. Now that is what you're going to do. Now our animation is, let's look at how many frames our animation is. I think it's around 300. We can check our camera angles. Let's change this panel to our camera one. And let's look at the animation. Yep, at 300, we can call it a full animation. Now, what we want to do is go to our Arnold render settings. First thing you want to do is change your image format to PNG. And once you've done that, go to here, Frame Animation Extension. Click this, and the best that I've always used is your name underscore number dot extension. You always want the extension at the end. It lets the computer read it much easier. Your extension is going to be like dot .jpeg, or in this case dot .png. And the number is your each frame number exported. Now let's click this. Frame padding is essentially the lower you have it, the less zeros the number has. Essentially, your name and then your number of the frame. If you have 4 padding, that means, let's say we render image 80, or let's say image 7. It's going to be 0007. So if you have thousands of frames, it makes it easier for the padding. You can tell which one is which, especially when it goes into higher numbers. So let's say we're rendering frame 120, it's going to be 000120. Now let's leave it at 4 because we are only using 300 frames, and we can also change this. This is our animation frame range. You want it to start from 1 and it ends at frame 300, and it exports every frame. Now the other most important thing is your image size. Now there's very different qualities that you can render. Usually it will stay at HD 540. That's the usual setting. And I always go with HD 1080. That usually gives the best quality, especially for bigger animations. Now, if your render time is too much, you can always lower the quality, and always lower the quality on here too, to 3, 4, 5, 6. Because my computer can run smoothly, I'll put it to 10, and I'll use HD 1080. And that's all the things that you need for settings. Your PNG, frame extension, frame padding, start and end frame, and your preset for image size. Now you can select your renderable camera. This is what it will render. And this is not too important, as we'll change the setting later. Now for now, the render settings are done. Now how you actually export from Maya for an animation is you have to go to rendering. Now once you go to rendering, click on the render tab, and there is a render sequence. Now you want to click on the square to open up more options, and this is where you can actually select which camera you want to export out. Your current camera will be our animation lies in camera 1, and all you need to do, you can always see that we changed the settings from start frame 1 and end frame 300, and you can see it over here. Just double check that it's 1 to 300, and all you need to worry about is your output location. Now you want to create a new folder for this. Now you want to create a new folder for this because it is going to be many hundreds of pictures. As you can see, 300 frames is going to be 300 pictures, and you want to put it where you can find it. So open the file, select the file, and all you have to do is render sequence. Now before you render sequence, I like to have the render file open on the side, and then I will keep the bottom section clear, because then you can see each frame being rendered, or which frame is being rendered, and the options will actually show up here. So let's start our render sequence. Now it will pop up your new render view. This is actually this icon right here. You don't ever have to worry about it. It'll open on its own. This is what it is. You can see the symbol is right here. Now what I was talking about, you can actually see your current frame being rendered. Right now it's number 2, now it went to 3. And you can also see the export, where we left 4 frame padding. So what I meant, 0003. That's your 4 frame padding. Now, as it renders, you can leave your computer charged and it will render on its own. And in the end, we'll compile them together. Now, if you ever want to stop the render, because it is best to leave your computer alone and leave it to render, it needs all of its power. If you want to ever do something else important and you need to stop this animation and not destroy any data, you can always press escape on your keyboard and that will stop your render sequence. Now, if you do that, then you have to remember that wherever you stopped, the frames before have already been rendered. Now, if you come to Maya again and render sequence again, it's going to start from frame 1 and end at 300. So all the frames that you had before rendered, it's going to override that and do it again. Now that's going to waste a lot of time. So instead, just remember to go back to your render settings and change the start frame to wherever you left off. Now, once all the rendered pictures are exported, you can open the file and see every single individual frame that comes with the animation piece by piece. And in the end, you just want to scroll down and make sure that there is indeed 300 frames or wherever you stop your animation setting at. Now, if you click a singular picture, let's try the first, and you keep clicking right really fast, that is essentially how the animation will look like, or is supposed to look like. One picture after another, really fast, will create the animation. Now, how do you compile it all together? We are going to use Adobe Premiere Pro. Now, once you have Premiere Pro opened up, you can open your file and select every single frame. Select your first, scroll down, shift, select, and that will select everything. Just drag and drop to the bottom left. Now, you don't have to use Adobe Premiere Pro. This is an advantage if you do have Premiere Pro. If you don't have anything Adobe related, you can try and use other video editing softwares and it should be able to work. Maybe it's a little bit more work, but it will create the same result. Now, once you've imported them, I want to right click and decrease the speed to 1 second per frame. Now, once we do that, every single frame is 1 second. All we have to do is move them all to the center and it will automatically make a sequence for us. Let's drag and drop. There you go. Our animation is going to run smoothly. Let's have this rendered. Let's have this load, and press play. Now, because it is a lot of frames, it will take a bit to get smoother. Just replay it a few more times and you should be able to get your final result. Now, once you've confirmed that every frame is in order, you can just scroll through, make sure that everything is in order. What you want to do is File, Export, Media. Let's rename this line model animation.mp4. Save it in whichever folder you want to save it as. And click export. Once your export is finished, we can now look and review the animation. There you go. We have successfully made a wine bottle animation. And from here, you can, if you find any errors, you can go back to Maya and obviously edit it and export it. Now you can see there's a bit of a glitch here. That's probably because of the lighting. But once we change the lighting or the settings, I'm pretty sure it will all be okay. Now, that is what we've learned, combining lighting, camera angles, modeling, texturing, and UV sets. Combined together, you can have any animation you want. Obviously, you can make your own style of wine bottle, wine glass. I would really appreciate it if you upload it and create maybe a group where I will be able to see them. Feel free to create your own creative bottles, or it doesn't have to be a wine bottle, it can be anything you want. But use what I have taught and create anything you want using Autodesk Maya.